Welcome back to the Chip Shot Football Podcast here for our last segment, just taking the conversation over to our ongoing series that we've been having, going through each division and addressing the unanswered questions we still have with each one of these teams and each division as we go through each day, each week in the NFL. We'll get through each division, and we're already onto the AFC, so there's only going to be a few more episodes that we're doing this before it concludes, obviously. So in this one, we got a good division, right? A very competitive and always cultivating division in the AFC North. And all these teams, despite, their seasons and things like that, they've been a lot surrounding the narratives this year. The Steelers, the Browns, the Bengals, all these teams have had big impacting storylines this year. And I wanted to start off with the Browns because the unanswered question I have about them is, I think obviously, what do they do with Deshaun Watson now, right? Where are we with this situation? Because, before he was unfortunately injured with that ACL injury, right? You hate to see him and how distraught he was, right? Obviously, but on the field, Watson, wasn't playing even remotely well for the Browns. Just on a football basis, he wasn't what they traded for, essentially, right? He's failed to live up to why they brought him in, why they gave up so much, right? The boatload of value that they gave up to the Texans, and now looking at where they are now compared to the Browns, it amplifies it even more, right? It's been every year now where you can say he's failed to validate the contract. Obviously, the most guaranteed money given to any player in the NFL, and then also, I just mentioned the trade value they gave up to the Texans, right? He's failed to live up to that up until this point with the injuries and all these things, right? Just not looking like he used to in Houston. So now this offseason, do they think about, alternatives at that quarterback spot? Do they bring back Jameis Winston and kind of run it back this year with the same situation? Can in any world they justify bringing Deshaun Watson back, or do the fans are they done with him? Do they just want to see them move on from him? And if you do move on, you think about the unimaginable amount of money and dead money at that that they're going to have to fork over, basically, kind of like Denver did with Russ. Do they just kind of rip off that Band-Aid, or do they kind of extend this a little bit more and try to work around it? It seems like Cleveland is once again going to be active in the quarterback market, unfortunately, because I don't really see how this thing kind of figures itself out anyway. Shots below the belt, thanks for joining the show. Cleveland Browns fans were convinced we are a quarterback away. Is the Deshaun Watson signing the worst in NFL history? I would probably say yes, and it might just be recency bias, but I think with how the huge contract and what the Texans not only got for him, because it was already a lot, but what they managed to turn all of that into and how they look right now, I think that amplifies it even more. And, Deshaun, just kind of his fall off and things like that, I think add on to it. So I would say yes. I would definitely say yes, just because also I can't really think of too many that I consider much worse than that. So I would say yes. I think it would be the worst signing / trade contract given out in NFL history. It hasn't worked out great for the Browns, and it looks like they're going to have to go through the entire process again. So that's what I still want to figure out. What's their first step going to be with this whole Deshaun Watson situation? And from one Ohio team, we go to another Ohio team. We go to Cincinnati, right, to the Cincinnati Bengals. And my unanswered question for them is, how significant, how big of a blow is 2024 going to be? The way it's going right now, looking like a failure to make the playoffs, how significant is this going to be for them going forward? Because, this year was supposed to be the year for them, because they were feeling better than ever about Joe Burrow, right, after the injuries that he suffered last year. he finally came into this year healthy, feeling great, like he said. He played in the preseason for the first time ever in his career, I want to say. And he's backed all of that up. He's backed it up with an MVP level season. It's unfortunate that they haven't been a great team because he's not going to be in any serious contention for the MVP where he has the numbers and he's been in big moments and he has put out great performances to be in that conversation at least, but he's not going to get any votes because the Bengals are not a good team. And then not only Joe Burrow and the way he's backed up everything that he's kind of set out to prove and provide for this team, but also you look at Jamar Chase and how his situation is with Cincinnati, right? Cincinnati wasn't keen on paying him this offseason, and he let them know about it, how upset he was about it, and missing training camp, parts about it, and he felt that he should have been paid, that he wanted to get paid, but the Bengals and their owner weren't really too keen on it as of that moment, right back in the offseason. Shots below the belt are the playoffs in terms of quarterback star power. Going to miss someone like Joe Burrow in the playoffs, I mean Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow, right? Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. Lamar Jackson also. Looking at the guys that'll be in it, Justin Herbert, I think, should always be in it. But of course, the team around him hasn't been very good, and now, thankfully, they have a guy like Jim Harbaugh in there, and I think he's always a guy that needs to be in it. I'm trying to think just quickly here. CJ Stroud, always another one. He's like one of those up-and-coming guys. Definitely not Mahomes, Allen, or Burrow or Lamar, but he's an up-and-coming guy that should always be in there. So yeah, I would say that they're going to miss a guy like that because he's been the only guy to defeat Mahomes in the playoffs, right? So you take away that possibility because the rest of the team has sort of failed them in a sense. So that's always unfortunate to see that they've kind of wasted this year, and that's where I'm going with this unanswered question, right? Because also the expectation was for them to kind of make a Super Bowl push this year, even if Jamar Chase was going to cost a lot of money, like he is going to cost. They were probably going to get a Super Bowl out of it or a deep playoff run out of it, right? That was the expectation going into this year, and it was going to kind of soften the blow next year when they were going to have to pay Jamar Chase, right? You got a good 2024 year out of him, right? So it wasn't going to be that impactful. But the way this year's going, right, and they could miss the playoffs, now you're still going to have to pay Jamar Chase, and it's going to cost even more after a year where you failed to make the playoffs. So it's kind of backfired on you there in a sense. And also, he's on the verge of having like a triple crown season, right? Cooper Kupp did that, and he got a Super Bowl out of it, but the Bengals have just not really been there overall as a team. And you were also supposed to get one more good year out of T. Higgins, but again, if you miss the playoffs, you're probably going to let him walk after a very disappointing year because you can't pay him and you can't pay Jamar Chase. So T. Higgins looks like he is going to leave after this year, and you've kind of wasted a great opportunity with everybody here for one last year. So that's also, another impactful thing that's happened in 2024. And, will this also cost Zach Taylor his job, right? With having T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and a healthy Joe Burrow, right? That was supposed to be enough, but they clearly, came into this season unprepared again, and a lot of that has to do with the head coach and the rest of the team building and everything like that, and coaching a good defense and things like that as well. I think have to fall on Zach Taylor. So there's a year like this, cost him his job, and then if that's the case, going forward, who's going to be the head coach? They're going to have to pay Jamar Chase, and how does that impact adding any more pieces? You're probably going to lose T. Higgins as well, so missing an opportunity like this, I think, is going to be extremely significant, and I'm interested in seeing how that plays out in years to come for the Cincinnati Bengals. And then we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's pretty simple for them, not as lengthy as the Browns or the Bengals, right? But for the Steelers is how do they improve, or can they improve their red zone efficiency, right? Russell Wilson has come in. He's looked great. The entire offense, I think, looks and flows a lot better with Russ, but they just went 0 for 4 in the red zone against the Ravens. And the Ravens, divisional matchups, it's always going to be tough. It's always going to be close like that, right? But I think it's unfair. It's unfair to think that this defense, for as good as it is just going to bail you out and hold teams to 15 or 17 points, right? It's unrealistic. And just like the defense complements this offense a lot, I think the offense has to complement that defense and kind of repay the favor in a way and score touchdowns and take advantage of being on the field so much because their defense gets opposing teams off the field so quickly. I think that's something that they certainly have to improve. And does that mean bringing on Justin Fields more? And do you trust him in those moments in the red zone? That'll be another interesting thing to kind of point out and follow. But yeah, I mean, that's really where it comes down to for the Steelers, right? Can they fix that part of it? And if they do that, I mean, they've looked pretty well everywhere else. So I think that's really the main thing that people are holding on to with this Steelers team. And lastly, the last team we have here, another one that's pretty simple, the Baltimore Ravens. Can that pass defense improve, right? Can this be a Super Bowl winning team with a defense that's playing that poorly when it comes to defending the pass, right? It wasn't so egregious this past week, right? Because they played the Steelers pretty well, but they still rank last in the NFL, and I don't think there's ever been a team that's ranked last in the NFL in terms of defending the pass to go on and win a Super Bowl. So they have to fix that part of the team. It can't be that bad to just think you're going to win all these high-scoring games because they have the pieces to, but in the playoffs, right, everything gets tighter. All the games in the playoffs, if you want to kind of get an idea of what they're going to look like, it's probably going to be similar to what the Steelers and Ravens game was this past Sunday than maybe like the Bengals and the Ravens game, right? It's not going to be like that, really. It's going to be more closer to what the Steelers and Ravens did this past week. So in that case, this Baltimore team needs to improve on that side of the ball. They need to be more disciplined on that side as well. Their pass defense is still worrying and just giving up too many points, especially late in games, right? I think they've given up the most fourth quarter touchdowns by a good amount compared to the rest of the NFL. So you can't just have that kind of hanging over your head, right? Like looking at it and thinking, are we going to give up this lead? Do we feel confident in this defense to kind of hold it down? You can't have that hanging over their heads, especially when maybe you have these questions about the usage of Derrick Henry and things like that. I think it plays into this conversation. And I'm going to end today's show with this last comment I have here. Shots below the belt. Lamar and Josh are head-to-head in MVP voting. Who goes further in the playoffs, the Ravens or the Buffalo Bills? I would say, considering I think the Bills are going to finish as a top 2 seed, I'm going to go with the Bills, and it might be a little bit like ridiculous in some standpoint because the Ravens beat the heck out of the Bills earlier this year, but I think since that point, the addition of Amari Cooper helps out a lot, and that home field advantage in Buffalo I think is going to help out tremendous, and in the playoffs, I think I would trust Josh Allen a bit more than I do Lamar Jackson. And that's just me personally. That's not based off of anything. I just feel like what I've seen from Josh and how close he's come to beating Patrick in a couple instances, I feel more comfortable with Josh in that regard. Whereas Lamar, not to take any shots at him or anything like that, but his record against Patrick is what it is. It's less favorable than what Josh Allen's record is against Patrick Mahomes. So I feel like they have a better recipe to beat the Chiefs or beat like the Ravens if they were to face off again. I think they would have a better understanding of it, and I would just trust Josh Allen more. And in terms of MVP, he would get my vote. I think he should win the MVP this year. So that's where I fall in that discussion. I think the Bills would go further if they were to meet, and if one was to represent the conference, I think it would be the Bills, in my opinion. That's just how I feel about them. I think they've played tremendous this year overall. But that is going to conclude today's episode, right? The Chip Shot Football Podcast tonight. I thank you guys for joining me. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. If you want to see more of the show, you can go on YouTube and just search up the name, or go on the Podcast Network channel or the GSMC Sports Network channel to catch more on the Chip Shot Football Podcast, as well as joining me each and every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more NFL coverage, conversations, breaking news around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys again for joining me, and we'll be back tomorrow to discuss Week 12 and Thursday Night Football.
Mm-hmm. 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 Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to